She hadn't seen her in over 2 years, but the moment their eyes met across blood-soaked earth and rusted steel, the world fell silent because some bonds don't vanish with time. They wait. They endure through silence, through absence, through pain and memory, and when they return, they strike like thunder remembered in the body. Not the brain, a flicker of a look, a breath held too long. The way the lioness didn't flinch, didn't growl, didn't run, but simply stared as if recognizing something ancient and sacred. The way Mara stepped forward, not as a rescuer, but as someone coming home to a piece of herself she thought lost forever. The tag in the lioness's ear read L07, but the name pulsed louder in the air than any number ever could. Layla, the lioness, who once slept curled beside a lantern, purring to the sound of Mara's voice, now lay bloodied and defiant over her injured cub, not just seeking help, but choosing where to find it. And what shocked the vets more than the cruelty of the snare was that this wild creature had brought her child back, not to safety, but to someone she trusted, someone she remembered. And as the dusk folded around them and the cub whimpered softly, Mara knelt, whispering a name that had never left her lips. And Layla blinked, slowly, not just in recognition but in acceptance, because time hadn't erased what love had once carved into them both. And though the wilderness had changed them, scarred them, hardened them, it had not unmade them. For in that moment where instinct met, memory and breath met breath, something long buried broke open and bloomed again, not loudly, not with fanfare, but with quiet, unstoppable grace. Each morning she moved through her routine with the precision of someone who no longer needed to think about what came next, rising with the pale light brushing the edges of the sky, her hands wrapping around a chipped mug worn smooth by years of use. She drank her tea in silence, not because she enjoyed the quiet, but because it had become the only sound that didn't echo her losses. The radio stayed off the curtains, remained half-drawn. Her boots always stood by the door, aligned just so as if waiting for a sudden call for action that rarely came. And though her movements were calm, her gestures practiced. There was a pause sometimes when her fingers brushed an old collar still hanging by the back door, or when she caught herself setting 2 bowls out. Instead of 1, she would stop only for a breath barely noticeable, and then move on, as if the moment hadn't mattered, but it always did. The air in the house carried the scent of dust and something older, something like memory. And each evening, as the sun bled across the plains, she stood at the fence line, eyes scanning the farthest edge of the horizon, not expecting anything. Not really, just watching, as if her gaze alone could will something once loved back into the world. She didn't cry. Not anymore. She just existed, with a quiet ache stitched into her every day, wrapped in the stillness of a life that looked whole but never truly healed. The day they opened the gate, the world felt too wide, the sky too vast, too silent. Mara stood still, hand hovering at her side, as Layla took slow, uncertain steps into the tall grass, her golden back flickering in and out of sight like a fading flame. There was no grand farewell, no final glance, just distance unfolding between them, until she was gone, and in her place only wind and quiet. Mara had told herself this was right, this was natural, but her chest caved inward. With every hour that passed without a sound, without a sign, she wandered the perimeter at dawn, searching for paw prints that never appeared. Her voice softened, from calling out into silence. Her laughter disappeared first, her music next, then the habit of talking to anyone. At all. She stopped writing reports, stopped joining meetings, stopped reaching for the second cup when making tea, because everything felt like pretending, like betrayal, to a part of her that had gone missing somewhere out there. Layla had also changed. She had once leaned into warmth, into Mara's touch, into the soft murmurs of bedtime calm. Now she learned to sleep with one ear raised, always ready for threat to come from the dark. She learned to fight over scraps to keep her cubs hidden, to trust no one. Her body grew stronger, her eyes harder. But beneath the surface, something stayed taut, stretched thin like a thread frayed but not severed. Each day passed like smoke, both of them wrapped in it. Mara counting sunsets, Layla counting losses, neither knowing if what they'd shared had survived the wild, but both feeling in the quietest parts of themselves that it had not truly died, only gone silent, waiting. Let's take a short pause, and now I want to ask you, where are you listening from? Have you ever experienced something like this yourself? When someone, maybe a person or even an animal, remembered you after many years apart? A moment that made you realize the bond had never truly disappeared. If stories like this touch something deep in you, make sure to follow. There's much more to come, and every chapter brings us closer to the heart. It started with a photo Granny taken on a ranger's phone. A lioness hunched low beside a crude wire trap. Her body curled around something small and trembling. And at first, Mara didn't understand just another case. Just another heartbreak. Until her eyes caught the glint of metal. A torn ear tag, barely visible through dust and blood. LO7. And the world tilted. It was like being thrown backward through time. Her breath catching the way it had that first night, Layla had let out a cub's broken cry and nestled into her side as if it were home. The photo blurred, not from motion, but from the sting in Mara's eyes. And with it came a rush, not just of memory, but of scent, warmth, laughter lost. She could almost feel Layla's weight pressed against her knees, the sound of her padded steps trailing behind. And then the fear came rushing in, wild, cold, merciless. What if she doesn't remember? What if she's changed too much? What if I see her, and all I find is emptiness? But deeper than fear came something else, flickering beneath the years of silence. A pull not rational, not safe, but undeniable. Because what if she does remember? What if she came back, not by accident, but by choice? The thought lit something inside Mara, long dormant, and without fully knowing why she packed her bag, her hands trembling, not from speed, but from the weight of what it might all mean, as the jeep rumbled toward the savannah, and the dusk spread like a bruise across the sky. Mara stared out at the land that had once taken and given her everything, her heart, a knot of hope and ache and questions too sharp to name. But still she went because some calls aren't made with words. They're felt in the bones and answered without certainty. Only courage. The engine cut out and the world fell into a hush, so complete, it felt sacred, the kind of silence that doesn't demand stillness, but reverence. Mara stepped out slowly, the crunch of dry grass beneath her boots louder than it should have been. Each movement, deliberate, each breath drawn with the weight of years. She saw her then, a shape in the half-light body, low eyes bright but dull with exhaustion. The cub still pressed to her flank, and for a moment Mara couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because seeing her was like seeing a ghost wearing the shape of someone she had once loved more than she thought possible. The wind shifted, carrying the dry, warm scent of fur and dust, and something so achingly familiar that it struck Mara like a cord being plucked in her chest. The lioness raised her, head barely slowly, her eyes locked onto Mara's, and the space between them vanished. No rush, no roar, just a long, still moment where neither of them looked away. And in that pause, Mara saw something behind the pain and fatigue recognition, not immediate, not full, but cautious, like a dream surfacing through fog. Layla's ears twitched. Her body didn't tense, didn't pull back. She made a sound, deep, low, soft, the sound she used to make at dusk when they sat under canvas and stars, and she nestled close for comfort. Mara sank to her knees hitting the earth, hard palms flat in the dirt. No words, no reaching, just presence. "Layla," she whispered, not sure if her voice would carry or if it mattered at all. The lioness blinked once, slowly, then again her. Breathing shifted slightly, chest relaxing just a little. Mara didn't move closer, didn't dare break the fragile thing that hovered between them, but she saw it then in Layla's eyes. Not memory, perhaps, but something truer. Trust shaped not by thought, but by feeling, by scent, by sound, by something rooted far deeper than reason. And in that instant, the silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything they couldn't say, and it held them both like a shelter, like a home they had almost forgotten, but never truly left. In the soft light of early morning, Mara sat just beyond the enclosure, knees drawn up, hands wrapped around a thermos. Not for the tea, but for the warmth, and across the short stretch of space Layla lay curled around her, cub, both of them quiet, but not guarded anymore. The first days had been full of silence, broken only by soft footfalls and low sounds of breath. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift a tilt of the head, a longer glance, a moment where Layla stood. Instead of crouched, her body no longer braced against the world. The cub grew stronger, began to explore in short bursts of clumsy energy. And once, when he pounced at a butterfly, Layla didn't tense. She simply watched. And Mara laughed aloud. For the first time in months, a small breathy sound, but it broke something open, and Layla's ears twitched at the sound, not alarmed, just listening. And one day, as Mara refilled the water basin, Layla came close, not rushing, not stalking, just walking until only the thin fence stood between them. She lowered her head and stood there, eyes steady, and Mara didn't speak, didn't cry. She simply mirrored her, lowering her gaze, pressing her palm gently against the mesh, and they stayed like that for what felt like hours. Two quiet souls, not reaching back toward the past, but simply being in the present, and with each passing day, trust returned, not as a wave, but as a tide, slow, sure, undeniable. The cub nudged Mara's boot through the wire, once Layla didn't flinch, and when she was strong enough to return to the reserve, she went willingly, not with fear, but with calm. She walked a few paces, then stopped, turned her head just once and looked straight at Mara. No tension, no sadness, just peace. And in that look was everything unspoken. I remember you, I trust you, we are still us. Mara watched her vanish into the grass, her chest full, not of ache, but of something brighter, quieter, steadier, because some wounds don't disappear. They change us, and some goodbyes aren't endings. They're part of the return, and sometimes when love survives in silence, it comes back not louder, just truer, and it teaches you that memory isn't always a shadow. Sometimes it's the light that shows you the way forward. Some bonds ask for nothing. They do not shout or beg to be seen. They live in the quiet, in the waiting, in the spaces between what was and what still might be. This meeting did not undo the years. It did not erase the pain, but it wove something back together, thread by quiet thread. Because true connection doesn't vanish. It lingers, buried deep beneath silence and distance, unchanged by time. And when the moment is right, it returns, not to remind us of what we lost, but to show us what was never really gone.